You are now on the road beyond. I'm Todd Duplantis. We're going to be taking you to places both far and near next half hour or so. Stick around for the show. It's great to have you with us. For those of you joining us live on Facebook, welcome to the show. We're going to be doing this around 7 o'clock every 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. Every Wednesday night, we'll have a couple of episodes of the show. Ike McFadden is my co-host. As always, good to see you again. Ike, where are you tonight?
Well, thank you for asking. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Sit back. We've got a good show for you today. We also have someone from another mysterious place, a place some of you may have heard of, a place called New Jersey, I think.
That's right, New Jersey. We are talking paranormal investigations, all types of investigation, poltergeist, ghosts at Gettysburg, which I'm very interested to talk about. Our guest tonight, Ike, is Randy Liebeck, and he's going to be bringing us some great information.
Yeah, Randy is going to be talking to us about a variety of things. He's a columnist for Unknown Magazine and Ghost Magazine. He is a feature writer for Fate Magazine, and he has contributed to several books on the subject of ghosts and hauntings, and he's also on the lecture circuit. And he's even taught courses on ghosts and poltergeists at St. John's University and Bergen Community College, among others. So please welcome to the show, Randy Liebeck. Randy, I understand you have a law enforcement background. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's my paying job that covers the mortgage for me because I don't make a living doing the ghost stuff. But I've been a cop for a variety of different agencies since 1985 at the county, municipal, and federal level. Currently, for the past several years, I'm in a threat management, counterintelligence, counter-terrorism, anti-terrorism, and anti-crime capacity for a federal agency.
So that seems like that would give you a background, probably unlike a lot of people, where you have some knowledge of protocols about how to properly investigate and document things. Is that correct?
Well, I apply the basic law enforcement technique that I learned over the decades, how to do how to collect and evaluate evidence, how to hopefully have a little heads up on deception detection when people are telling me stories. So, and I also was taught how to do basic photography, use of thermal imaging that we use for search and rescue purposes. A lot of this stuff translates directly over into ghost and poltergeist cases. So it was an advantage of the background. But I will point out that there are thousands of people who do this very well, have a lot more experience than me, who are not cops. So that by itself doesn't make me anything special, but yeah, some specific training and experience I do think is a help rather than a hindrance.
Randy, I want to ask you about some of your investigations. We've got a few of them listed, and one of them I want to start with because I'm a history buff. Fascinated with Gettysburg, the location itself. Obviously, a lot of history. Tens of thousands of people died on that battlefield. And, you hear about a lot of stories involving ghost activity. What have you learned through your investigations with that? And let's talk about what brought you to Gettysburg.
Well, the first time I went to Gettysburg was back in the mid-1990s. I was consulting with a group called Vestigia, which was a paranormal research group here in New Jersey. And we did a round to Gettysburg, my first time there. And on my first trip, I personally experienced some stuff, mainly subjective sensations in a sense that in certain locations, the Toto we're not in Kansas anymore feeling, which I'd never felt before on a case. And I've been there probably 6 times since then. And every time I've gone, I've either felt something, heard something. In a couple of cases, we had some interesting photographic results. We've gotten strange EVPs in one location. My experience indicates to me of all the places I've been to in the U.S. and overseas, Gettysburg, acre per acre, for real estate, I think it's one of the most densely haunted locations out there, depending on how you define, haunting. We don't know what these things are, what's behind it. If it's deer, if it's dear old, dead, Corporal Jones coming back from beyond, or whether it's just some sort of recording in the environment. But various cases and various experiences point in both directions. Some cases seem like there might be a past event just playing itself over and over again. Yeah. Others seem to be more interactive. So it strikes me that at Gettysburg, you have two types of haunting activity going on.
So well, that's what I was going to ask you, because hauntings, it seems like you've got a film that goes back and forth. It just replays itself over and over, and you see the same people doing the same actions, and people are witnessing that. But you're saying you've witnessed just both hauntings and interactive ghost activity. Is that correct?
The experiences I've had were mainly auditory and just feeling, sensations. The auditory things we got were in response to attempted communication. One of the techniques that I utilize is it's a technique that John Sable developed called ghost archaeology, where you go into a location and you address whatever you're trying to address there using the language, terminology, concepts of the time when people actually lived and died there. So one of the procedures I used in one particular location, the Triangular Field, was I got a list of the soldiers who died in that particular battlefield and did a military roll call. Identified myself as a federal officer for the United States, called out names, and we got a couple of responses calling that out. Can't swear that it was a ghost responding to me, but the responses seemed to be reactive, right, which indicates to me it's not a recording. It's something which was aware of our presence and reacted to it. And many of the other cases reported, it seems to be more of a recording. People see reenactments of battles. They'll hear, and I've heard gunfire and cannon fire late at night, and they've approached the park rangers, and they've confirmed there are no reenactments or anybody firing cannons on anywhere near the battlefield, after 10 o'clock at night. So that seems to be a residual thing, playing back.
So let me ask you this. That's about the U.S. I understand you've done some work in the U.K., and there's something that's the most haunted house in England. Is that correct? Can you tell us about that?
Did one case in the UK at the behest of a British television show. It is not the most haunted house in the UK. The building is called Little Dean Hall. It is the oldest continuously occupied house in the UK. It was written up in a couple of books before I ever got out there, and another writer in his description in his book called it the most haunted house in England. There are dozens of locations in the UK and in the US and throughout Europe that all claim to be the most haunted spot, for wherever they are. So you have a competition going on. This particular place may very well have been very haunted, but there are many other locations. The Tower of London, the old Borley Rectory, which I think could lay claim to the most haunted title more than Little Dean Hall could.
Let me ask you another question that's sort of a follow-up and goes back to you being in law enforcement. As I assume you are aware that human reports of things, especially something like audio or sensation, that's not something that would do you a lot of good in court. I mean, what is your take on that, and how do you counter someone who might say, well, yeah, Randy heard something, he'd been up drinking last night?
Well, I'm going to agree with you and disagree with you in a single breath. Yes, subjective experiences, what I or anybody else hears, sees, feels, that is subjective evidence. There is no instrumentation to back it up, no recording, video or audio tape, to back that up. So yes, it does have limited utility, at least as evidence in the psychical research field. One person's experiences that are reported have minimal value by themselves. The value comes when you combine hundreds, if not thousands, of personal experiences like that, and you pick up common denominators, trends, especially from people who don't have an interest in this field. If I say I experienced something and it sounds like 100 other ghost reports, it could be said, well, Randy has read a lot of books on this stuff. He knows what to say. I'm interested in people who have not read these books and don't know certain things we're looking for. So the testimony has value for our field as a cumulative effort. Now, as far as it having no human testimony and experience having no value in a court of law, that's not correct. Personal experience, even hearsay evidence, is admissible in court. It's identified as what it is. But in most criminal cases, most robberies, most car thefts, most carjackings, most drunken disorderly cases, what the court has to rely on is witness testimony. Now, witness testimony can have varying degrees of accuracy. 10 people will see the same event and each report it a little bit differently, sometimes greatly differently. But that's the way the legal system works. It evaluates this information. A jury or a judge looks at the totality of the eyewitness testimony and makes basically a gut decision. If you have physical evidence to back that up, that's great. But lots of people have been found innocent or convicted based solely on the value of eyewitness testimony. So it does have value. It's just, you have to evaluate each case in the totality of the circumstances.
Randy, looking back at your cases, and the Gettysburg one is just fascinating to me, especially with the things you heard, the feelings you felt while you were there. What has been your most challenging or most disturbing case that you've worked on? One where you left and you really were shaken up by it.
Nothing that shook me up out in the field on a case. I've had stuff happen in my own house, which shook me up. And I was working one case for a couple of years. It was a poltergeist case in Dutchess County, New York. And something very strange and disturbing happened to me before I even got to the location. It started when I first spoke to the primary experient on the phone. And that phone conversation seemed to trigger some activity in my house. So that and I lived in a haunted house for a while and had unusual, kind of frightening experiences in the house, seeing shadows appear in the room. And a couple other things happened, but those were not at anybody else's location. The stuff just happened around me at home.
Do you find that, just a follow up to that, do you find that when you are investigating, I've heard cases where entities, spirits, whatever you want to call them, may attach themselves to you and manifest in your own home. Have you found that to be the case?
I've had something like that happen once, and I'm not going to jump to the conclusion that an entity followed me home. That's one possibility. There's another hypothesis out there that exposure to a haunted location or exposure to a poltergeist situation, it can have like a viral or almost contagious effect where somehow it interacts with your own physiology or neurology, and whatever was causing the stuff at location A can follow you to location B, but not necessarily a ghost or an intelligent force. I was in New Orleans once, and I was on a tour. The regular ghost tour all the tourists go on. A guy came walking out of, I think it was Doc Zombie's voodoo shop. And he looked like somebody who would be in Doc Zombie's voodoo shop. And he gave me a set of beads to wear and says, "You, sir, need these." And I go, "What are they for?" "They are to protect you because they're watching you and they're going to follow you home." Wow. So I said, okay. He gave me, a set of very, cheap, beads that, girls do other things to get the beads, and I got a free pair given to me. I didn't have to take my shirt off or anything. So, okay, great, free beads. Didn't think anything about it. I got home after a few days, unpacked all my equipment, and I had all my ghost hunting gizmos and cameras and Geiger counters and stuff, and everything was shut off. Unpacked it, put it beside my bed, went to work the next morning at the police department, came back home, all the equipment was on. Everything was running. Everything, Geiger counter, EM meters, video camera and a Canon 35 millimeter still camera were all turned on and active. And I knew I turned them off. I said, okay, I can have brain farts like anybody else. I must have left them turned on. Turned them off when I found them on. Went to work the next day, came back home, all the equipment was back on again. After that, I realized, okay, this is not normal. Either somebody is coming into my house, which is locked, and when I'm out, which was not happening, or something anomalous was occurring. And at that point, I remembered this guy from Doc Zombie's voodoo shop and the beads he gave me, saying, hey, you need this protection. Something's going to follow you home. Now, do I know and after the second day, it didn't happen again. And that's all that happened was the equipment, kept turning itself.
Right.
So yeah, that's one of those things that I still remember to this day. And it's one of those things that still makes me go, when I think about it.
Creepy.
So yeah, let me get back to the law enforcement part. You discussed working on several cases, and is this something that you do for other agencies? Do people reach out to you from other law enforcement agencies and say, hey, Randy, we've got this thing, we don't know what to make of it, can you come look at it?
I do not do that officially. I am not on the X-Files. My job is protecting the U.S. government from terrorist or espionage attacks or active shooter events at federal facilities. I do not do government ghost work. That being said, the folks I work with at the state and local level and the federal level do know of my interest and involvement in this and have come across things themselves, either responding to calls or guys have worked at haunted jails or haunted police stations and didn't know who to talk to about or who to call in until they got to know me. So I got access to several places like that, including haunted police stations, haunted hospital facility, one haunted prison, and then private residences that different cops from different departments knew stuff was going on, had possibly been called in. People, when they get scared, even though cops do not handle haunted houses, people get scared. What do you do when you're scared? Yeah. You're afraid to stay in your house. You call the cops. Cops will respond. They'll say, hey, I can't do anything for you. But then they would say, hey, Randy, you want to go meet this lady who called us, and maybe you can be of some help. So I got introduced to a couple of cases through that. So being on that job, having the connections I had was a benefit. And it's also allowed me to get access to more public places, which are not accessible to civilian ghost enthusiasts. I've gotten brought in by State Park Service to locations which were there. The rangers were experiencing seemingly haunting activity. They would not publicize it. This was never in a newspaper or a TV show, but they wanted to see if I could get to the bottom of it. That was in a couple of cases, both at the state of New Jersey level.
So it sounds like this is perhaps a little more common than maybe the average person might think, that whether it's park rangers or law enforcement or, as you said, jails, it sounds like the lay person might not be aware of that this is somewhat common.
I've talked to so many cops from so many different agencies who've told me their encounters or brought me to places. The former chief of police of Newark, New Jersey, brought me to a location once to get my take on it. Several years ago, I put a notice in the magazine that our police union, the Fraternal Order of Police, FOP, put out for New Jersey. And I said, hey, I'm a cop, I work for this department. I'm interested in this kind of stuff. If anybody out there, active duty or retired, has had experiences or responded to calls, because I was thinking about writing a book about police interaction with the paranormal. So I said, please let me know. I got so many responses, not just from New Jersey, but from around the country. I still have stacks of letters that I have in a big Tupperware container that I've not done anything with yet. I've read them. I haven't put them into a book form yet. But yes, not uncommon. So many experiences. A mixture of people responding to calls where people say, hey, I have, my pots and pans are flying out of my pantry, and the cops would get there. None of them actually saw pots and pans flying out of the pantry, but they would get there. The house is trashed. The lady of the house is hysterical. Now you can interpret that in more than one way. Certainly, it's not proof anything paranormal is going on. But the cops said, Randy, if we'd known you back then, we would have brought you in right away. Other cops report that the prison they worked at or their police station had been haunted, and they told me their personal experiences about that, and that was very common. There are so many haunted police stations and jails and prisons across the U.S. And also, a lot of them told me stuff about hospitals. The cops will always, accompany ambulances to hospitals, respond to assaults, or people wind up in the emergency room, and a lot of their anomalous experiences were centered around hospital facilities. So I noticed that trend. But yeah, I would not call it uncommon. Now, of course, you look at the total number of law enforcement in the country. The number I got reports from was a very, very small percentage of that. But still, to me, it was significant.
Not uncommon, but things you certainly don't hear in the mainstream media. His name is Randy Liebeck, paranormal investigator, law enforcement officer. Randy, we appreciate you being on the show. Where can people find you on Facebook? Do you have a website? Where can they go to get more information?
Well, you can look for me on Facebook, Randy Liebeck, or go to my website, which is ghosthunter.iwarp.com. That's ghosthunter.iwarp.com. And you can link to my Facebook through there.
Randy, we appreciate you being here. Get to writing that book. I could see that being fascinating. You got some great stories.
One of these days.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks for being on the show. We look forward to talking to you again in the future.
My pleasure.
All right. And Ike, some fascinating stuff. We keep talking about this on the show, but we've got to get one of those ghost boxes. I think, and play around with it on the show, because I think our producer, Pete, has a ghost box he said they're going to let us use. So you game for that, Ike?
Why don't you remind people what a ghost box is, anyone who just tuned in?
All right. So Pete, maybe you can correct me on this. You can unmute your mic and join us. But
sure.
A ghost box, uses Pete Haviland, folks, is the producer for our show. But a ghost box, actually, you can ask questions to it, and it's an electronic device. And from what I'm understanding, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, but it scans the airwaves when you ask a question, and it'll manipulate sentences to form a response to your answer. Is that more or less how it works?
That's what they say, and the ghost box itself is put together with a speaker. It has a noise reduction as well as a reverb, and supposedly the noise reduction will cut out all the sounds from the radio and give response.
Okay,
I've been dealing with it, and I'm questionable.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to pick that up from you this week. Ike, next week on one of our shows, we're going to bring the ghost box on. We're going to power it up, and we're going to ask some questions. So you game for that, right, Ike?
Oh, absolutely. I imagine the ghost box would do at least as good a job as co-hosting as I would.
Okay, so we're going to have Ike, and the ghost box will be on the show next week. All right, time for the news right now, Ike. Let's dive into these stories. Here's a look at some of the weird, tantalizing, and just plain ass bizarre stories posted from our partners at the Full Spectrum Project. You can find them on Facebook. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because we talked about this earlier, and we've got some fascinating stuff we're going to bring up here. All right, so the first story, Ike, we talked about this earlier, but some Ghostbusters were busted in England. Okay, get this, a team of about, I think 12 to 13 people, all different groups. They decided to go exploring in some haunted houses in England. They got into a haunted house. Only one problem, though, Ike. They're on a lockdown in England, and that's not allowed. So little do you know, the police show up and said, "What the hell are you doing here?" and kicked them out of the house because they breached COVID rules. And I know you're familiar with that because were you not in England for the first part of this?
I was in London back in, I guess it was early February. And it's, this actually doesn't surprise me that much in the sense that Certainly, for people who don't know this, the UK has, I think they're on their third lockdown now.
They're pretty serious over there. They're taking this pretty seriously. You can't even hunt ghosts. That's serious business.
Well, maybe vaccinated ghosts is something you could hunt.
Well, there you go. This is a look at the house here. It's in Cheshire Police Rural Crime Team, Cheshire, England. That's where the haunted house was. They showed up. And the weird part about it, Ike, apparently these three groups that convened on the house, they weren't related. They were just three different groups of ghostbusters going there to look for ghosts during the COVID lockdown. So little did they know, everybody got a stern talking to and told not to come back here again. So
well,
there you go.
It is interesting. I mean, something I've noticed about England is that they are, compared to the US, they're more rule bound, and it's more common for people to just accept. Well, obviously not in this case, but it's more common for people to say, well, we just need to all do this for the greater good. It does seem odd that they were all there hunting ghosts on the same night.
There were 12 people found in the building from three separate groups. Okay, here's my question. How do you wander around a alleged haunted house and not know there are two other groups of people in the house? There's no one in there allegedly, and you got it just all of us doesn't add up. Anyway, they all got a bunch of tickets for trespass offenses, and they were sent home and given a good talking to. So that happened in Cheshire, England. Cheshire resident Graham Hardy joked, so basically three groups of crackpots, still each to their own. So that's a very English phrase for them to say. All right, this next story I know you're excited about because we talked about it. But yes, folks, we've got some ghost video or UFO video we're going to show you right here. A spaceship been caught on camera by real eyewitnesses, and it's very clear footage. This comes to us from UFOsightings.footage.uk. That's where you can find the story. And there you go, Ike. And we both came up with the idea that this spaceship reminded us of something.
Yeah, that's right. It, at least once you see it in flight, it reminded me quite a lot of what I think was called the Eagle from Space 1999.
Space 1999, yeah. So there it is. And it even gets better because there's a closer look at it, but there's video of it. Here we go, folks. All right. There's the spaceship, and it is flying around. Looks like a drone to me, Ike. Anybody could have built this. And I don't think, I've never heard of spaceships with an exhaust system that looks like a homemade rocket. So
I've got to say, though, I mean, it does, of the spurious videos we've looked at, this is one of the better ones, actually.
Yeah. So there you go. It's a spaceship, and you're seeing it right there on. See, we bring you quality programming here on The Road Beyond.
Where allegedly was that taken? Do you have any more information on that?
Well, here's the strange thing about it. No location, no time, nothing. All it says, hey, folks, here's some great video of a spaceship, and take a look at this. So there you go.
Well, that seems perfectly reasonable to me. I see no reason to doubt any aspect of that, Todd. Thank you.
So there you go. That's what you're going to catch here. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching us live on Facebook Live, we appreciate you joining us. Make sure you like our page, The Road Beyond Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Road_Beyond. And Ike, we have a YouTube channel where all of our videos are posted.
Oh, wow. That's great. I should watch that.
Yeah, I think you set it up. So it's The Road Beyond on YouTube. So look at that as well. Thanks for being here, folks. And we hope to see you again next time. I'm Todd Duplantis.
I'm Mike McFadden. See you next time.